Chapter 11. Motivations. When Princess Asami disappeared, I was inconsolable. I found out she was gone about a week after she ran away. Prime Minister Nakagawa tried to cover up her absence in the hope that she would be found or come home on her own, but when neither event happened, someone in Kyoto eventually tired of my incessant calling and spilled the beans. I had a panic attack. White House medics had to come and revive me. My mom and my sister repeatedly told me that everything was going to be okay, that Asami would turn up eventually. But the days turned into weeks, and then those weeks became a month. Nobody knew where Asami was, and I was getting genuinely frightened for her. By this point, we'd known each other for almost 6 years. It was only less than a year since we finally admitted we were dating, virtually at least, to our families, and I had a better relationship with Asami than anybody I knew in Washington. Losing her was nothing less than devastating. I devoted most of my summer to trying to find Asami. The chief of staff suddenly found himself being worked to the bone, not just by my dad, but by me as well. I demanded more and more resources for the search, and as soon I had an office in the residential wing all to myself. It was filled with computers and televisions, and when I turned 18 years old, I used my allowance money to hire 4 retired CIA workers to help me look for Asami. In all reality, my team was probably doing more to locate her than the actual Japanese government. Not that they weren't trying. With slightly less than half of their own country under enemy attack or occupation, the Japanese didn't have that many resources to spare for a search. To make matters worse, Asami's parents kept their mouths shut about the whole affair, perhaps out of embarrassment. When I called, Prince Ryobe told me he had no idea where Asami could have gone. My team and I had to come up with our own search methods. We used everything we knew about Princess Asami to try and filter out the noise. For instance, because the princess grew up in Tokyo, she talked in a certain way with an accent that was easily noticed by people from other parts of Japan. Her unique, slightly high-pitched voice, combined with her striking appearance, gave us a real advantage when contacting Japanese officials and giving a description of her. We were able to reduce our search area to just a few units of the Japanese military because the specific combination of blue eyes, black hair, slightly high-pitched voice, and a Metro Tokyo accent wasn't all that common in Japan. We did get a lucky break from sources in America, too. Whenever Asami or her siblings came to visit Washington, their medical information was secretly made available to the Secret Service, just in case they got sick or hurt. So now I had Asami's fingerprints and blood type. I distinctly remember the day I found out Asami's blood type because I had a conversation with the White House tutor afterward. May 4th, 2011, the White House. Angela Porter was the maternal grandmother of our family friend Chris Wright, and she served as the White House tutor for the first 4 years of my dad's presidency. On the day I found out Princess Asami's blood type, I called her into the residential wing where my team of retired CIA workers were trying to track down Asami and asked her how I could put this info to good use. "War is a nasty business, Blake," Miss Porter said. "In modern conflicts like this, there is a much higher chance of your girlfriend being hurt than killed. If she's wounded, Asami will end up in a hospital somewhere. If she requires a transfusion, you can trace the request for a compatible blood type straight to her." "Transfusion?" I repeated. "Compatible type?" One of the CIA men looked up from his computer. "Imagine you got shot," he said, "and you lose so much blood that you might die. Well, the doctors can take blood from another person and give it to you, so long as they have the correct blood type." "For example," Miss Porter said, "what did you say the princess's blood type was?" "She's A positive," I replied. The tutor clapped her hands and giggled. "Oh, that's wonderful," she said. "Aren't you A positive too?" Truthfully, I did not know my own blood type. Fortunately, one of the CIA guys covered for me. You're A-pos, Mr. Robinson. Miss Porter went misty-eyed. She was a hopeless romantic, and she'd seen something poetic. Not only do you and the princess have the same type of blood, you're compatible with each other, she said. You can donate your blood to Asami, and she can donate her blood to you. Isn't that just beautiful? Ma'am, with all due respect, a CIA man said, there is nothing beautiful about traumatic blood loss. Even so, we did keep an eye on military hospitals in Japan and Korea. Every time a teenage girl with type A blood was reported to the Red Cross, I felt my heart twist in horror and relax when we confirmed it wasn't Asami. In the end, I got my first real lead from her sister. Princess Akeno relayed the story to me of how Asami was jealous of her brother getting to fight in the war while she was expected to stay home and lay low. She wanted to do her part, Akeno told me. She thought she was being a useless waste of space just hanging around the bunker with us. Once, I even got the Emperor himself to talk to me for a little while. He blamed himself for his niece's disappearance. He said that he always wanted to bring the imperial family closer to the people, but he was worried Asami took things too far, and that she would try to enlist in the JSDF. She may have gotten herself killed. So much time has gone by that I don't clearly remember the moment when I decided to join the United States Army. I distinctly remember the topic came up several times when I was with the former CIA staffers in my personal command center at the White House. We constantly complained to each other about how it would be so much easier to find Asami if we just had some of our own people on the ground doing the search. There was only so much we could do by combing government records and news footage. When we ran out of leads, our last resort was guesswork, and that got us nowhere more often than not. In turn, the idea of going directly to Japan just kept coming up. My biggest fear wasn't that Asami would be killed. Like Agent Walsh was 6 years ago, I was terrified of the possibility that she would be captured or abducted. By 2011, the war had taken a particularly nasty turn. The People's Republic and the USSR were resorting to some pretty heavy-handed methods to maintain the obedience of the people living in their territory. Each week, news broke about people who were being tortured and tormented by their communist oppressors. And the Red Army was on a rampage. At least 2 mass rapes that we knew about had occurred, victimizing the women of Sapporo and Tbilisi. Thousands of supposed dissidents were executed every day. If the reports were to be believed, there was a mountain of bodies piling up in the city of Miyako, and the women of Hokkaido were being systematically assigned to Soviet men as they were transplanted to their new homes, which had been seized from the Japanese locals. I was terrified Asami would be caught up in one of these unfolding atrocities. I had nightmares about the possibilities, and it was made even worse when I thought about her reasons for running away. She felt like a waste of space. She wanted to do something. She wanted to fight. Even if nobody in the Japanese government wanted to admit it in the moment, I could guess where she'd gone. In fact, the idea was hiding in the back of my mind for a while, and I was just refusing to accept it. The White House tutor simply brought it to the forefront one day, in a coincidence the paradox would have been proud of. June 29th, 2011. It was my very last day of class before my 18th birthday. My little sister and I were watching television in the blue room when the tutor arrived. Miss Porter showed up that day only for my sister's benefit, because I got my high school diploma from Sidwell Friends School about 3 weeks previously. My education was complete. When she arrived, Miss Porter found Jackie and I were watching a news report about a recent change in U.S. Army policy. Ever since Mary Hayes took her fallen husband's place at the cannon during the Battle of Monmouth, women have been laying down their lives for our country in battle, said Pete Guerra, who was sitting at the anchor's desk on screen. However, they've been doing so without permission. For as long as the U.S. Army has existed, so has a blanket ban against women serving in frontline combat. Certainly the fairer sex has engaged in battle many times under the American flag, but it was usually under some kind of extenuating circumstances or special permission. Harriet Tubman of our own Civil War springs to mind. But now America is 4 years into a brutal war that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and our armed forces are starting to feel the strain. Fortunately, there is no shortage of brave young men and women who volunteer to fight for the American way. This surge of hopeful young soldiers has torn the cover off of a century-old policy forbidding women from doing exactly what they want to do: fight. Now, there is talk in the halls of Congress and in the White House that this policy may be abolished once and for all, if only to free up more bodies to be thrown into the Fukushima meat grinder. Miss Porter picked up the remote and muted the television. "So then, I guess that's our topic for today," the tutor began. "Blake, you know you don't have to do these classes anymore, right?" "What am I going to do?" I muttered despondently, head in my hands. "Go back to my room and listen to 4 guys tell me they can't find my girlfriend again? Or listen to them calculate odds that she's already dead?" Miss Porter sighed and sat down with us. "What makes you think that?" she asked. "It really looks like she ran away from home to join the military," I said, barely keeping myself together. "I've heard about the bad things that happen to women and girls when soldiers get them." Miss Porter puffed out her chest like she was about to deliver a lecture. "Well then, Blake, it sounds like you've only heard half the story." "Half?" Jackie and I said together. "Half," Miss Porter confirmed. "The history of women in war is long and storied. Now sit up and listen." The next half hour was one of the most enlightening of my time in the White House. Miss Porter taught us about how entire battalions of women saw action during the First World War, about Joan of Arc leading the French to victory in Orleans, and how some women disguised themselves as men to serve in armies that wouldn't allow female soldiers at all. "Like that Disney movie," Jackie chimed in. "The one with the little dragon." "Oh, my son loves that movie," Miss Porter confessed. "Watches it all the time. You know that movie is based on an old Chinese legend, right?" I perked up at this. "Wait a minute. Really?" I said. "Certainly," Miss Porter confirmed. "Hua Mulan has been a Chinese folk hero since around the 5th century, at least." "Legends and folklore have a way of getting around," I murmured. I was talking to myself, an idea forming in my head. "Some of the stories we have in Michigan are a little different in Wisconsin or Ohio or Ontario." "Yeah!" Jackie jumped on the bandwagon and started counting local legends from back home on her fingers. The Sleeping Bear, Paul Bunyan, Mackinac Island, Chief Petoskey, Loons, the Griffin, lots of stuff. And the stories are all over the Great Lakes region, and they're all different depending on where you are and who you talk to." "So, what are the chances that Japan has a similar legend?" I asked. "And what if Asami's heard of it?" Miss Porter was thinking so hard that she stuck out her tongue and closed her eyes. Finally, she came up with an answer. "I think there are several famous warrior women in Japanese folklore. Obviously, Empress Jingyu comes to mind first. Then there's Kaihime, who defied Hideyoshi and killed his men in open battle during the Sengoku. That's a period of civil war in Japan, by the way. Tomoe Gozen, can't forget her. Who else?" I kind of tuned out then. I was actually starting to go mentally numb. Asami was born and raised in Japan. Any one of those historical women warriors could have been the role model she looked up to. I cursed myself for not asking her about this sort of thing when I had the chance. By now, I was finally coming around to accept the reality of the situation. Asami had almost certainly joined the Japanese military and was actively fighting in the war. Knowing her, there was a very good chance that she was using a false identity as well. Maybe she was dressed up like a man, like Lizzie Compton. I could feel the bottom falling out of my stomach. My closest friend, my girlfriend, was going to get herself killed, captured, or far worse, and there was nothing I could do about it. At least for the next 12 hours or so. June 30th, 2011. I didn't feel any older the next day, but the adding of just one more year onto my age made all the difference in the world. My 18th birthday was a quiet one. The only guests we had were Andy Guerra, Chelsea Daniels, and Kathleen Walsh. Walsh was allowed to return to duty about a year after taking 3 bullets for us. To our great surprise, she was just as active and capable as she was before the shooting. The woman didn't let something as petty as a bullet slow her down. Jackie and my mom made a great big cake for all of us to share, and Andy asked the question that got the gears in my brain spinning. "So what are you going to do now?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "Tomorrow's just going to be any other day, right?" "Not really," Chelsea said. "You're legal. You're an adult now. You don't have to do what your parents say anymore. I've been wishing to be 18 for the last 3 years. I'm tired of people treating me like a kid." "Legally, you are a kid, Egypt," Walsh quipped, ruffling Chelsea's hair. "She's right, though. What you gonna do now, Trojan, now that you're a man?" My parents and friends were staring at me so hard that I thought I was going to be pushed over backwards. Finally, after about 10 seconds of hesitation, I said the first thing that came into my mind. "I want to find Asami." "In other words, you want a spy satellite," Dad laughed. "I'll talk to the Pentagon then." "No," I raised my voice a little. "I mean, I actually want to go to Japan. I want to find her myself." Silence. My mom took a deep breath. "Honey, Japan's a war zone right now. You can't just wander around there looking for someone. You might get shot or blown up." "I'll go with the military then." "Again, son, there's a war on. The U.S. military is really busy working alongside the Japanese right now." "All right." I was getting really stubborn now. I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't backing down. "How do I join?" Dad was so caught off guard that he couldn't think of anything to say. Walsh draped her arm around my shoulder and said, "I knew you was an all-right kind of guy, Trojan. Knew it all along. You join up, and that'll make us blood brothers." Later that night, the chief usher came and found me. He said that my dad wanted to meet me in the Oval Office. When I got there, Agent Walsh was sitting on the couch in front of the Resolute desk, looking up at my dad with a kind of concerned look. "Son, I think it's admirable that you want to find Asami so badly," he started. "But I want to make absolutely certain you know what you're doing." "Wait, are you trying to stop me joining the army?" I asked, fist clenched. "You know you can't do that." Keeping calm, Dad nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right, son. I can't stop you. You're a man now. Your life is your own. But as your father, I'll make damn sure you spend your life for the right reasons." Taken aback, I didn't know how to respond. Dad carried on. "Joining the armed forces is no small thing, Blake. You're giving yourself up for your country. They're not going to send you to Japan just so you can find one girl. You're going to be there to serve your country first and foremost. This war is bigger than you or Asami. Millions of people are suffering. Countless more are being killed, even right now, and a lot of them are Asami's neighbors and friends. They matter just as much as she does, and we're fighting to save them too. Understand? Yes. And as for Asami herself, let's say you find her. She is alive and well. What happens then, Blake? What does she do? Well, I couldn't get an answer out. Truthfully, I did plan that far ahead. I had this whole fantasy in my mind where I would rescue Asami from whatever predicament she was in, perhaps languishing in some Soviet gulag, and then I would take her back to America, and we would ride out the rest of the war in Camp David. I couldn't bring myself to share any of this with Dad. I could feel a creeping sense of shame crawling up the back of my neck. Let me tell you what you were thinking, Dad said. You thought you could make like one of those action movie heroes. Go rogue for a few weeks, hunt down wherever the princess was, rescue her in some shootout set to 80s synthesizer music, then fly away with the grateful and loving young women wrapped around you like you were the last man on Earth. Something like that, right? God damn, he got close. I don't like synthesizer music, but everything else was spot on. I felt like I was deflating like a balloon. This was one of my dad's superpowers. He could make anyone feel bad without raising his voice, and that's exactly what he was doing now. As much as I'd hated to admit it, he'd cut right to the core of my thinking. I hung my head. Dad shook his head. Think about Asami, he said. Try and see this all from her point of view. She ran away from home for a reason, son. She has her own goals and hopes for the future, and the war is clearly at the center of her mind. Yes, Blake, you can enlist. You can fight. You can try to find Asami. But you need to be ready to accept the possibility that when you do find her, she'll be a completely different person. War changes everyone. It might even change you too. So halfway through the 6th year of my dad's presidency, I moved out of the White House and set out on the next stage of my life. I was determined to find Asami. I knew I loved her and that I wanted to be with her again. But in that moment, I hadn't decided yet if I could love and be with whatever she might have become. August 29th, 2011. Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Get out! Get out of the fucking bus right now! 50 men and women disembarked in chaotic fashion. 15 soldiers watched us go, all of them wearing wide-brimmed hats atop their army uniforms. Carrying my own duffel bag at my side, I winced as one of the army drill sergeants got in my face and screamed, "What the hell is on your face, boy? I forgot to shave this morning." Yeah, I should have kept my mouth shut. 4 drill sergeants descended upon me like sharks in a feeding frenzy. "You irresponsible, punk-ass little shit!" one of them yelled. "You think the rules don't apply to you because your daddy's the president? Well, this ain't the White House, punk!" another drill sergeant roared. "No more maids or butlers for you. Your daddy's not here either, so you're playing with the big boys with big boy rules. Now pick up that bag, hold it over your head, and fucking get in line!" Moving quickly, I raised my duffel over my head, like everyone else. It was no easy feat. The thing weighed almost 30 pounds, and keeping it aloft for any stretch of time was brutal. But all of the new recruits were made to do exactly that. We stood in a 5x10 formation, rows upon rows of people, and held our bags over our heads while the drill sergeants went from one person to the next, finding the smallest fault and yelling at them for it. A few young men and women were reduced to tears, and things only got worse from there. I was so busy trying not to do or say anything that would get me chewed out that I barely noticed the people around me. After a few minutes, though, I had no choice but to notice. 2 drill sergeants closed in on my part of the formation, then took aim at the man on my right. "What the factual fornicating flying fuck is on your goddamn face?" Drill Sergeant Ray screamed so hard her voice cracked. "You disgusting slimeball! Who let you in here like that? Wipe your nose right now, you icky freak!" Yes, I saw his face. No, I'm not going to tell you what it was. Meanwhile, the man standing to my left was looking at the spectacle, leaning forward to get a better view while snickering the whole time. Drill Sergeant Archer spotted this and held nothing back. "What's so funny, huh? Come on, tell me." The man straightened up at once and said, "Nothing, sir." Wrong answer. "Did you just call me sir? I'm a goddamn drill sergeant! Where the fuck do you think you are? The fucking Marines?" I lost my composure at this. My duffel bag tumbled to the ground as I grabbed my sides in laughter. One row in front of me, a young woman with platinum blonde hair did the same. The drill sergeants went nuclear. "Half right, face!" Every soldier pivoted on the balls of their feet to face the new direction. "Front-leaning rest position, move!" And then all 50 of us were face down on the ground, holding ourselves up by pressing our palms into the dirt. We were waiting for the drill sergeants to order us to start doing push-ups, but the order never came. Our tormentors had found a new target. They closed in on the blonde-haired woman in front of me. "What the hell are you doing here?" the female drill sergeant snapped. "No kids allowed." Speaking from the dirt, the woman said something in an accent so insanely thick that I couldn't understand what she was saying. "What the hell was that?" Drill Sergeant Ray replied. "Talk a little faster, kid. No one can understand you through your freaking speech impediment." The blonde woman looked up defiantly. I had to strain my ears, but I did catch her words this time. "I'm no kid. I'm 18. "Bullshit," 5 drill sergeants said at once. Then the verbal abuse came for her just like everyone else. "You're what, 4'8"? You look like you need a booster seat and a training bra. What's your name, kid? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services and get you out of here." "Kate Newberry, and I swear I'm 18, the woman protested. Again, her accent was so powerful that I was struggling to keep up with the conversation. Even Kathleen Walsh was easier to understand than her. Meanwhile, the rest of us were in torment. We'd been holding ourselves up on our hands for about 3 minutes, and the weaker soldiers in the group were starting to collapse. This took the heat off Kate Newberry. As soon as the drill sergeants moved away from her, Kate's arms ran out of strength, and she collapsed into the dirt. The shark attack, a tradition of U.S. Army combat training, lasted for about 2 hours. We were made to run laps around the building, dump out the contents of our bags, and then repack them in less than 30 seconds, and recite the soldier's creed from memory. When none of us could accomplish this final task, the drill sergeants were so infuriated that I thought 1 or 2 of them might explode. Finally, the nightmare was over. Our first day of basic training ended only when the sun went down, and we were allowed to enter the barracks for the first time. Our platoon gathered in the classroom, waiting for one last briefing from the commander before being dismissed for the night. I sat myself in a corner, trying to keep out of the way. I knew the drill sergeants were planning to go after me because my dad was the president. They'd gotten it in their heads that I was expecting to have special privileges because of my dad's status. I don't blame them for thinking that. I would have assumed the same thing if I was in their boots. Those 3 soldiers who'd been near me during the shark attack all graduated towards me after a while. First, the icky guy, then Kate, and finally, our presumptive class clown. "Aw, yo, man, it's really the president's kid," said the class clown, a Hispanic soldier with a messy mop of black hair on his head. "Dude, I'm Hernandez, Mateo Hernandez." He wouldn't budge until I shook his hand. By then, Kate showed up. Like Mateo, she was having trouble believing I was who I claimed to be. At least, that's what I think she said. Mateo Hernandez and I looked at one another in a way that said, "You first." I have to ask, I said. "Where are you from? I've never heard someone talk like you before." Kate Newberry folded her arms and gave me a sulky look. "Ain't it obvious?" she said. "I'm from the great state of Texas." The way she said it, I genuinely believed I was seeing the Lone Star flag waving in the air behind her. The image was ruined when the icky guy showed up and said quite bluntly, "What the hell are you doing here?" He was pointing at me. "How about you tell us who y'all are first?" Kate replied. "James Cass," the icky man said simply. "Now, what is the president's son doing in the army?" "Yeah, I wanted to ask the same thing," Mateo piled on. "Yeah," Kate said. "Shouldn't y'all be like chilling with some rich people food and banging supermodels or something?" "You're thinking of McDonald," I groaned. "I'm just trying to get to Japan." "Are we all?" Mateo said. "Why you, though? You've got no reason to go to war. You could probably pay 8 or 9 poor fools like us to go in your place." "I could, but I won't," I snarked. "You guys couldn't do what I need to do over there." "Oh yeah?" James said. "And what's that?" "I need to find someone," I said. "My girlfriend's over there." The trio looked at one another. "Wait, you talking about that Jap princess?" Mateo said. "Asami," I said coldly. "Her name is Asami." All 3 soldiers fell silent. I wasn't really feeling like talking to them anyway, so I started to walk away. But something James said caught my ear, and he held me fast. "So, wait, that was real?" I looked back. James was the only one of the trio who was looking me in the eye. Kate was blushing into her hands. Mateo turned his gaze skyward and seemed to be muttering a prayer. James talked slowly, as though trying to pick his words carefully. "We all thought, the news was making it up. That it was an act. I mean, the government fakes stuff all the time, and..." He trailed off. Kate finally looked up and said, "So, y'all are fixing to find her? How come she's missing?" I took a deep breath. "She ran away from home and joined the Japanese army. She's off fighting in the war somewhere. I just want to find her and make sure she's safe." Mateo let out a low whistle. "Bro, you must really love that girl, huh? I don't think anyone else would sign up for a war just to find a girl." I scoffed and rolled my eyes. "Yeah, I must seem pretty stupid to you guys, huh?" Now that these strangers laid out my own goals and thoughts in front of me, I could see exactly how foolish and ridiculous my actions probably looked to them. I could feel my face getting hot and was deeply grateful when the drill sergeants entered a few seconds later with the unit commander. "Soldiers, while you're here, you will learn how to act and fight as a team," the commander began. "When you arrive in Japan, and believe me, you will be going to Japan, you will be the most well-oiled machine this war has ever seen. Now, to start, you will be divided into fire teams. Each unit will consist of 4 soldiers." Just like we were back in high school, there was a sudden and very loud scraping of chair legs on the wooden floor as 50 young people tried to separate themselves into groups and cliques. The commander and drill sergeants all laughed. "You've got to be kidding me," said Drill Sergeant Archer. "Immature kids," I grumbled from my place in the back of the classroom. "I know, right?" James said from my left. "Those gringos need to grow up," replied Mateo from my left. "Them folks got nothing in their heads," Kate muttered from directly in front of me. It took me about 10 seconds to realize that these soldiers had placed themselves near me very much on purpose. "Oh, now you are really kidding me," I hissed at them. "Dude, you're like the coolest guy here," James said. "Your dad's the president." "Y'all gonna rescue your girl? That's damn romantic," Kate told me. "I want in on the action." "And we've already got a good impression of you, so you're not shaking us off that easy, Robinson," Mateo finished. Can't speak for the other two, but I'm happy that all that stuff with the princess was real. Let's keep it that way. Meanwhile, the drill sergeants were moving through the company, breaking up the freshly formed cliques and forming people into fire teams. Then combining fire teams to form squads, and finally grouping squads to form platoons. Because we were at the back of the room, they reached us last. Drill sergeants Archer and Ray looked down at us. "Well, crud, we missed these scamps," said Drill Sergeant Archer. He shook his head in disapproval. "Should we split them up anyway?" "They'll all end up in Japan together, no matter what we do," replied Drill Sergeant Ray. "Keep them together for now, and my brother will straighten them out when they get in country." As the two drill sergeants left, I reluctantly allowed my 3 unexpected new friends to pull me into a group hug. "We'll get through basic together, and then it's off to the Pacific," James said. "Like I'll sweep that princess right off her feet," Kate proclaimed. "It'll be so romantic." Then Kate added in a low, sultry voice, "Hey Blake, that princess has got an older brother, right? I've seen him on the news. Can you introduce me?" Oh, I should have known.